بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك، وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الله. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما، إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي. يا رب إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فتبغضوا إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك، فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده، قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة ونعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه. فكم من موهبة هنية قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم صل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وصل على الأئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك. استخلفوا في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه واعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم اظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم ألمم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، واعزز به ذلتنا، واغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وانجح به طلبتنا، وانجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، واعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، واعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، واذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا، فصل على محمد وآله وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجلوه وبضر تكشفوه ونصر تعزوه وسلطان حق تظهروه ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الفاتحة قبلها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
For the Urdu Majlis, please proceed to the other hall. Thank you.
Quran with Brother Taha Nabawi. Please recite Quran with Brother Taha Nabawi. Please recite the salawat.
سورة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العلي العظيم.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah, Taha Nabawi. Now I would like to request Brother Muhammad Ibrahim for a recitation of Salam with your loud salawat.
صلوات.
Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? In the morning when they walk, hanging on your blessed clock, from their eyes with tears they spoke, shattered hearts to you invoke, from the masjid stay away. Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Ibn Muljim struck your head, dripping down profusely bled. Moon and stars becoming red. Tell me, is creation dead? Lights have lost their beaming gray. Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Darkness has made its way. Ya can you stay? You're the scale where each act lies, but a cry comes from the skies. This alone is your demise. Look away from Zainab's eye. As her pain you cannot sway. Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? When your sons were hand in hand, lions always understand. So Abbas knew this command. That same hand was on the sand. Bravery did he portray. Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Darkness has made its way. Ya Ali, please, can you stay? Salawat.
MashaAllah, Brother Muhammad Ibrahim. Before I invite Sayyid Suleiman, a few announcements. We are commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is a 3 lecture series. Tonight is the second one, and tomorrow, inshallah, will be the concluding lecture. Tomorrow is a Laylatul Qadr as well, so after the Majlis, there will be brief amal. We request everyone to stay and participate in that. And Saturday night, inshallah, is the night of the 23rd, which is also a Laylatul Qadr. The Imam Bargah will be open all night for the amal. There will also be amal together, and you can sign up for reciting the dua or Quran or anything. So we request everyone to keep that in mind, and please do come to your masjid to practice these du'as and amal with other mu'mineen and mu'minat to increase your tawfiqat. We are starting a food drive. It's a month of Ramadan, month of giving, so we also want to contribute as a masjid. We will be putting containers for non-charitable food items that you can bring and donate, and all these donations will go to a refugee family or families at the end of this month, inshallah. Now I would like to invite Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulaiman Hassan, to address the Majlis tonight with your loud salawat.
سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. During these nights of the month of Ramadan, we remember and we commemorate the martyrdom of our first Imam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam, the heir and the successor of our blessed Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And in the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we see an extension of the values and of the character of our Prophet himself. There are certain attributes that, because of the nature of the Prophet's task, they showed themselves most perfectly and most completely in the life of Imam Ali, although they are the teachings and they are the character traits of our Prophet himself, which he taught Imam Ali and which Imam Ali manifested and showed in his life. Sometimes we make that mistake, or people make that mistake when we mention Ahlul Bayt or we mention Imam Ali. They may ask that question that, how come you are not mentioning Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi himself? And the answer to that is that anytime a follower of Ahlul Bayt says, قال الإمام جعفر الصادق عليه السلام, قال الإمام محمد الباقر عليه السلام, قال أمير المؤمنين علي ibn Abi Talib عليه السلام, the meaning and the intention and the reason for remembering Ahlul Bayt and for carrying forward their statements, their sayings, their ahadith, is so that we can understand what were the commandments of Allah, what was the message and the sunnah and the practice of our Prophet. That is expressed very beautifully in a definition of what it means to be a follower of Ahlul Bayt. In the words of one of the most prominent companions of our fifth and our sixth Imams, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhim as-salam. And the name of this companion is Aban ibn Taghlib. He was a very prominent scholar of Arabic language and of Quran and of fiqh, of the length and breadth of the sciences and the disciplines that Ahlul Bayt taught. He was a very prominent figure in all of those sciences, such that he was well recognized by the contemporary non-Shi'i scholars and scholarly community of his time. Particularly, his knowledge of Arabic and his knowledge of Quranic sciences was recognized, although he was sometimes criticized for being a very loyal follower of Ahlul Bayt and being on good terms with their friends and on bad terms with their enemies. He had wilaya and he had bara'a, association on behalf of Ahlul Bayt, and an animosity or disassociation on behalf of Ahlul Bayt. And so this was something that for some Muslims, they held against him. But his honesty, his piety, and his scholarship, that is something that even those biographers who may have opposed him on religious grounds, they did not deny. Aban ibn Taghlib. Somewhere he may have been asked, so what is this school of Ahlul Bayt that you follow? What does it mean to be a Shi'i or to be a follower of Ahlul Bayt? Is this some separate school from the mainstream of Islam? And he expressed this point that following Ahlul Bayt means to be following the Prophet. And quoting Ahlul Bayt is one way of understanding what was the implication and the extension of the principles laid down by the Prophet in new circumstances and in a different time. He says that the definition of a follower of Ahlul Bayt is that when people differ about what was the saying or the practice or the teaching of Rasulullah, then أخذوا بقول علي ibn Abi Talib. They don't say, well, I guess that part of Islam is lost. They go and they say, what did Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam say? And they follow his teaching. So for example, our Prophet, he performed congregational prayers for at least the entire time that he was in Medina. And before that, he used to pray, and even the non-Muslims used to witness his prayer if they did not join in. But the prayer of the Prophet was not something that he did in the privacy of his home, and it wasn't something that was not witnessed by thousands of people, close companions, casual acquaintances, and even non-Muslims. In Medina, in Umrah, and in Hajj. In Umratul Qada and in Hijjatul Wada, there would have been tens of thousands of people who would have witnessed the Prophet praying publicly among the Muslims. But there are differences among Muslims about how to perform that prayer. One approach that you can say is that, well, these are details. They are not that important. You can pray this way or you can pray that way, and does it really make a difference to Allah where you place your hands, or whether you do qunut, or when you do qunut within the prayer? Because there are differences among Muslims about these details of prayer. But the answer to that is that if the Prophet taught something, and if, as all Muslims believe, he said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli," pray as you see that I pray, it was important for Islam and for the Prophet and for Allah, for us to find out what was the actual proper way to pray in the teaching and in the eyes of the Prophet, because that is the way that Allah wants us to pray. We can't just say that, well, one companion says this is how you should do it, and another companion says this is how you should do it. And so the answer that is given by the followers of Ahlul Bayt is that when there are these different principles that are enumerated by different companions, when there are different understandings of the meaning of the verses of Quran, of the doctrine of Islam, of the laws of ritual worship or social practice or other areas of Islam, in interpreting the Quran, in understanding Islamic law, in understanding the attributes of Allah and the doctrines of our faith, for those who are followers of Ahlul Bayt, they don't say that this knowledge has been lost. They say instead that this knowledge was preserved by Allah and it was passed on by the Prophet and it was entrusted to his heir and his successor, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam, and therefore إِذَا اخْتَلَفَ النَّاسِ عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أَخَذُوا بِقَوْلِ عَلِيِّ ibn Abi Talib. Then they go and they follow the teaching of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But you see the distinction, that it isn't that they idealize Imam Ali in his own right. They recognize that Imam Ali is Babu Madinatil Ilm. He is the gate to understanding the teachings of the Prophet. And therefore, when you say Imam Ali said this, your intention is, and what you take from learning his teachings, is to have a shortcut to the authentic teachings of the Prophet when there are disputes. There are many areas of Islam where what Imam Ali says is the same as what many of the other companions say. So if you want to learn Surah Al-Fatiha from Ubay ibn Ka'ab, or you want to learn Surah Al-Fatiha from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, or you want to learn Surah Al-Fatiha from any of the companions, if there is a commentary of the Quran where there is no difference, then to be a Shia, you can take it from any of them. But if there is one companion who says, I understood the verse this way, and Imam Ali says, no, this is not the meaning that I heard from Rasulullah. If there is a law of Islam that Imam Ali says, this is how you should do wudu, and other companions say that you should do wudu in a different way, then in order to understand what Prophet Muhammad actually taught, you come to say, what did Imam Ali alayhi salam teach? And then after Imam Ali, there were also differences. Imam Ali, he ruled in Kufa. And for almost 5 years, a little bit more than 4 years, Imam Ali's government in Kufa, it was a utopia in one sense. There was a great deal of chaos because of the division sowed by the enemies of Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was warfare, there was economic pressure and strife, social dissent, but there was the beauty of the character and the practice, the sermons, the teachings, the lived example of Imam Ali. And what happened is that many people attributed now their own doctrines and used the prestige of Imam Ali to say things that Imam Ali never said or taught. So just like because of the prestige of the Prophet, there were people who forged a hadith. They want to do wudu their way, but they will say this is the wudu of the Prophet. They want to introduce something new in the practice of Islam or in the performance of the prayer, but they will say this is what we heard from or what we saw from or what we learned from Prophet Muhammad, and it is false. Similarly, Imam Ali in his time had such honor and prestige that many people, their own opinions, which they learned from other authority figures or from the caliphs, or which they took out of their own pocket because of their own desire and their own preference, they attributed it to Imam Ali in order to bring acceptance and recognition from people. So Aban says that the first step is, in order to access the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, if you see the companions or some of them go in one direction and Imam Ali goes in another direction, you don't need to be confused, but you follow what Imam Ali said and taught. And then what happens if there is a difference of opinion about what Imam Ali said? وَإِذَا اخْتَلَفَ النَّاسُ عَنْ عَلِي أَخَذُوا بِقَوْلِ جَعْفَرِ بْنِ مُحَمَّدٍ. Then they will follow the teachings and the guidance of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. So when we say that we are Ja'fari, we are not setting a label separate from following the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, but merely we are recognizing that there are many different schools of doctrine and theology. There are many different schools of law. There are many different opinions in the understanding of the Quran. And you and I are not perfect, and we will not be able to fully understand all of those teachings and all of those doctrines. But we understand what is the source of guidance. And when there are different attributions to Prophet Muhammad, we take what Imam Ali said. And if there is a difference of opinion about what Imam Ali said, then we take what Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq said. So to be Ja'fari is to be Muhammadi. To be Alawi is to be Muhammadi. But it means that you have a belief that the teachings of Prophet Muhammad are not dissolved into the disagreements of the generations that came after. Those teachings are preserved in a pristine and in a pure form, with the imams who are appointed by the command of Allah and the decree of the Prophet to be our guides and to be our leaders. Where we have access to those teachings, then we follow them without any doubt. And where we don't have access, then at least we know what is the source of guidance, until Allah is the one who reveals those things that are hidden from us and makes apparent that call of Islam, which is in abeyance and being awaited until the advent of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Yesterday we gave the example of ibadah, worship. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi taught that there is a slogan that a Muslim has, which is that worship for us is not something that we do just on one day of a week, a day of worship or a day of attendance in the masjid. It isn't just that you pray Friday prayer and then you can live your secular life the rest of the week. Worship is not something that you do in the month of Ramadan and then you kind of take it easy the rest of the year, or in the month of Muharram and then you take it easy the rest of the year. But rather, the slogan given by the Quran to the Prophet and by which our Prophet lived, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. My worship, my prayer, but the entire life and even my death, all that I have within my existence, this is the property of Allah. I don't lay claim to even my own life. And of course, by extension, everything within my life. If I give my life to Allah and I give my death for the sake of Allah, then what is my money? Then what are my possessions? What is my time? What are those superficial credentials and honors that I might acquire within my life? If my life itself is for Allah, mahyaya wa mamati, that means everything within my life belongs to Allah, which means that worship is not something that you do just on your musalla, on your prayer rug. Worship is the entirety of your life and your existence. That was the motto of our Prophet and the practice of our Prophet. And that is what we learn from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He was found wherever he was needed for the service of Islam. And that is why during the lifetime of the Prophet, perhaps where the role of Imam Ali was most visible was on the battlefield. And yet, maybe contrary to what many people may think, Imam Ali was not a warlike person. Imam Ali did not like battle, and he did not seek the glory of the battlefield. When he was asked, he said, I value justice more than courage on the battlefield. Because if there is justice, you won't need to have war. And you won't need to have courage on the battlefield. This is not because of fear of the battle. There is nobody who was more courageous than Imam Ali when the need for battle was there. But Imam Ali, with his soft heart and his sympathy for widows and orphans and people who suffer through battle, through no fault of their own, did everything in his power to avoid battle. And that is why, although the world would say there is no greater warrior than Imam Ali himself did not want to be remembered for his courage in battle. That was an obligation that he fulfilled when it was needed. To see the softness of the character and the heart of Imam Ali, an incident will suffice for us just to imagine that the image people sometimes have of a figure on the battlefield is far from representing the heart and soul of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You know, in that day and age, there was slavery, and this is a discussion that people sometimes ask, why did Islam not abolish slavery? One of the reasons was that sometimes when you had a tribal society, you didn't have social security, you didn't have any kind of strong government aid. The only way to ensure that people's life and livelihood could be preserved was for them to enter a household that had safety, and then they could learn the skills they would need to live their own life. They would have, first of all, their life protected. They would also be able to have shelter and food and clothing that they needed. Otherwise, in those days when people were defeated in battle, often they would either be killed or they would die of hunger and starvation just because of the nature of the limitations of society. Most people lived a subsistence life, and it wouldn't be possible for a defeated people to thrive or even to survive if they had lost in a battle. So for various reasons, Islam did not abolish slavery, but Ahlul Bayt, when they had slaves, they waited until the appropriate time, when that slave had learned enough about Islam and about how to survive in society that would permit the Imams to free them. So whenever you hear a story about the Imams freeing a slave, know that this is the background. That the Imams, they did not have slaves because they wanted to profit from them. They did not have slaves because the Imams wanted to sit back and have somebody serve them hand and foot. The Imams only had slaves because they wanted to give them an opportunity to learn a skill or a trade, to learn about Islam, so that when the Imam saw that they were ready, then they would be set free. This was a practice that was institutionalized by our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. But it was also practiced by all of our Imams in one form or another. This incident that I'm about to quote is from Imam Ali. If you don't understand the background, then the incident, it might be a little bit difficult to relate to. There was a person who was a slave, you can say a servant of Imam Ali, and Imam Ali called him and he didn't answer. And the Imam could tell that he was not far away, so he called him a few times and that person did not answer. So then Imam Ali stood up and he went to see where this servant was, And he saw that he was sitting and he could hear the Imam. He wasn't doing anything. And he had not gotten up to answer the call of the Imam. So he said, "Why did you not come when I called you?" And that slave, he said, "Kasiltu an ijabatik wa amintu uqubatak." I was too tired to get up. And I knew that you weren't going to punish me anyway. And so I took it easy. Now, this is a slave. In a society where, forget slaves, children would shake when their fathers called them. Wives would shake when their husbands called them. Employees would shake when their bosses called them. It was a society that often was governed by fear. In fact, this is one of the reasons that our Prophet was criticized. When people said, "Huwa udhun," he listens too much to people. The Prophet doesn't make himself scary like you want a king or a general to be. He is a friend and he is compassionate with people, and this went against the expectation and the desire of many people for a leader in society. This is one of the reasons why the companions said that we don't want Imam Ali to be the leader of our government, because Imam Ali meets people with a smile on his face. He doesn't have that prestige, and he doesn't strike fear in people's hearts by his frown and by his strictness and by his anger. And so now you have somebody who is a slave of the Imam in name. And the Imam calls him repeatedly, and he keeps doing whatever he is doing. And when the Imam comes, he doesn't even fear to admit. It's one thing that you can get caught and you can make excuses. But that is the training of Imam Ali, that his slave did not make excuses. I was too tired, and I knew you're not going to punish me. Now, sometimes you would imagine that that would cause the person to say, "Wait a minute, I need to dial up the fear factor. My kids aren't afraid of me. I don't have credibility." But what did Imam Ali do? He smiled. He praised Allah and said, "Oh Allah, I give you thanks that even those people who are most vulnerable to my mood and to my command do not have fear or terror when they hear my voice or when they think of me." And then he said that, "O slave, I have granted you your freedom." Now that you can take two ways. If he was too lazy, then maybe it was a little bit of a nudge into the deep end of the pool, so he can learn that by being lazy, you're doing harm not to your imam or not to your employer, but to yourself. And so it is a way to say that now take charge of your life. And it also may have been an act of generosity, because a person who can make their own decisions, maybe it is because now they are looking for their freedom, and then they will have initiative. In any way, it was a kindness of the Imam, whether it was a nudge for the person to take responsibility, or it was a recognition that the person is ready for responsibility. That was the kindness of Imam Ali, that when people said, "We are not afraid that you will punish us for our mistakes," Imam Ali said, "Alhamdulillah, that I have that kindness and compassion in my character, that people recognize they don't have to fear my terror or my tyranny or my injustice." So Imam Ali, he was not looking for battle. But when war was imposed upon him, then he fought heroically and was never defeated in any battle that he fought. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he is the extension of that value system of the Prophet, that everything he does is worship. One of those attributes of worship that we learn from Rasulullah, and which we see reflected in the life of Imam Ali, is hilm, or forbearance and forgiveness. This is maybe a forgotten attribute in our relationships. Sometimes, because we have so much going on, we have so much stress, that we are not really willing to give people a little bit of space. and show a little bit of kindness if you say something to me before I respond. It's worth thinking for a moment that, do I really need to respond? Is this what Allah wants me to say? Do I need to have a comeback for every comment? Do I need to have a response for every insult? Do I need to always answer every provocation? Or if somebody says something in ignorance, or in haste, or in anger, maybe they are my spouse, maybe they are my sibling, maybe they are my friend, maybe they are just a fellow mu'min or mu'mina, a community member, but something is going on in their life, they're not in the best place, they're worried about their job, they're worried about a family member who's sick, they speak out of anger, out of haste. Hilm is that you don't always respond, but rather you take it in and you respond in a way that reflects the values of Ahlul Bayt, that reflects the highest moral qualities that you can aspire to, not just what that person deserves. Sometimes that person deserves a slap in the face, but you don't deserve to stoop to the level of the person that may have spoken to you insultingly or harshly. Don't look at whether you think they deserve it. Sometimes we think they deserve a slap and they don't, because it is our own fault that somebody is angry at us. But even assuming you're right, and they do deserve it, never respond to somebody based on what they deserve. Respond to them based on what you deserve, meaning based on what is expected from you in light of the fact that you were raised with the love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You were raised with the teachings and the example of the most noble and the most compassionate people in all of humanity. So that kindness and that akhlaq and character of our Prophet and of Ahlul Bayt, it should be reflected in my tongue. It should be reflected in my words. It should be reflected in what I show to people, even if I am in a difficult circumstance. And if it doesn't reflect in my character, then there is a disconnect between me and Ahlul Bayt. Now, a common question that people ask is, well, does that mean you have to be a doormat? Some of you may be familiar with that expression where people walk on you. They think that if we have an argument in a family or in a circle of friends, if I don't press my advantage, that means that people will walk over me. And if in a family or in another circumstance, if I don't stand up for myself, then I will lose something. But look at the teachings of Islam. They show you how you can stand up for yourself without being unkind. One example from a hadith attributed to our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. In Surah Al-Isra, Allah says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَإِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما. Allah has decreed that you should not worship anyone but Him, and that you should show kindness to your parents. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Now, what happens when sometimes you have a situation where your parents are unkind to you? On the one hand, the Quran says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. On the one hand, the Quran says, لا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. You should be gentle and kind in how you speak. On the other hand, you do need to also be true to yourself and to stand up for yourself. So Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq explains that. He says that if your parents are unjust to you, then say, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمَا. May Allah forgive you. وَذَلِكَ مِنْكَ قَوْلٌ كَرِيمٌ. That is from you a noble statement. Meaning you do stand up for yourself. You do assert that what is right and what is wrong is wrong. But you don't do that in a way where if they raise their voice, you also raise your voice. And where you speak harshly or argumentatively, you speak in a way where you are praying for forgiveness. But in praying for forgiveness, you are acknowledging that what they said is not right. So you maintain hilm, forbearance, but it doesn't mean that you don't acknowledge what is right. We have a very beautiful incident from the time of Imam Ali that illustrates one example of that forbearance of Imam Ali in a way that he stood up for what is right, removed a false accusation that was made, and also preserved the charity for which Imam was known. Towards the last years before the outward government of Imam Ali, there were many companions that had major business enterprises, you can say commercial empires, and they were very proud of the fact that they were able to maintain trade and houses and employees in many different cities. They would engage in trade from Egypt to Syria to Yemen to Iraq to Persia and beyond, and they were very wealthy and they could manage those employees in a large household and all of those different affairs. And they looked to Imam Ali and they said, what is Imam Ali able to manage? So they started rumors that Imam Ali, he wears old patched clothes. How could he be the ruler of a vast government when Imam Ali, you know how sometimes even today people will say, this person won't be able to run a small convenience store. How are they going to run a multinational corporation? So that was the rumor that was circulating. In that time, if you look at the wealth of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Talha, Zubayr, you'll see that it was in the millions of dinar and dirham. And some of these same people were the ones who were making these rumors about Imam Ali, that he's going about in Medina, he's just wearing simple clothes, he doesn't have any wealth, and therefore he doesn't have the ability to govern and manage. Now, Imam Ali recognizes that this is not coming from a place of sincerity. This is not a rumor that is meant to reflect anything but a desire to keep him away from what is his right and from fulfilling the covenant of the Prophet in leading and guiding the Muslim Ummah. So, with his kindness and with his forbearance, Imam Ali showed them that their impression was wrong. What he did is he said to his agents, because Imam Ali also had much property, but they were sadaqat. They were endowed by the Imam for the utilization of the poor. They were an endowment. The Imam Ali said to his agents in that endowment that don't distribute the produce, the grains, the dates, don't distribute them immediately to the poor as you used to do in the past. Collect it. With respect to dates, the Imam said, sell the dates day by day and then convert it to dirhams, to cash or coins, and store them in my house. Put it in a place where nobody can see. So it was said that a harvest season came and 100,000 dirhams were collected in the house of the Imam. Then the Imam called all of those people who had made those rumors. It wasn't to show them, but it was for them to know that their assumption that the simplicity of the Imam meant that he was not able to govern was a false assumption and rumor. Very kindly, very gently, the Imam stood up for what is right, showed them the falsity of their rumor, and then eventually he gave all of that property in charity. He called those people. They came to the house of the Imam, a simple house. But they saw that in every corner there are dirhams. And even for them, 100,000 dirhams in one home was a lot of money. They said, "Oh, Abu al-Hasan, what is this?" They said, "You thought that I did not have any money and therefore I would not know how to manage and how to govern the affairs of society." This is commentary from my side. The Imam said, "You thought that I do not have any wealth. This, I will tell you, is just the produce from my lands and my property that I have endowed in the way of Allah. And there is not a single dirham here that is owed to anybody, Allah or any human being." And they knew that Imam Ali did not tell any falsehood. And so they believed what he said. And after showing them this, the Imam, he told his agents, "Now look at all of those people that I used to give charity to, and go and give them their share, which is due to them based on the instructions that the Imam had given." And so then within a day or a few days, that entire 100,000 dirhams, it was distributed. So you see that forbearance in the teaching of Ahlul Bayt is not for you to ignore rumors and not stand up for yourself or not stand up for what is right. But rather, it is for you to act with wisdom and with kindness. And when you see that something is in need of being mentioned, that not saying something will allow a false rumor to stand that will be of detriment to your rights or the rights of others or to the principles of Islam, then stand firm. But if there is no need, then for your own personal ego, don't worry if people say that you are walking around with simple clothes as they would mock Amir al-Mu'mineen, even though he may have been wealthier than all of them in terms of his property and in terms of his income, yet his lifestyle was simpler than any one of them. Because the only time he showed his wealth was when it was needed to remove a false rumor that had been circulated to damage the honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen and to call into question his competence and his right as a ruler of the Muslims. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This was a flavor of that prophetic teaching, that the Muslims were given an opportunity to see 30 years after the death of the Prophet. There were many companions who had gone into trade. They had earned millions of dinars and dirham. They had forgotten the times of the Prophet. But there were other companions who remembered the simplicity of the life in Medina, the purity of the company of the Prophet. And for them, the time that Imam Ali ruled in Kufa, it was like a reminder, a breath of fresh air that brought the fragrance of the prophetic era into their lives. And they could not imagine that they would live a moment, that they would pray a prayer, that they would listen to a khutbah of Jum'ah without Imam Ali there to guide them. Because that would mean not only that they are deprived of their caliph and their imam, but it was as if they were deprived of the Prophet himself a second time. And so when that fatal blow of Ibn Muljam was struck in Kufa, there was a commotion in the city. There was one tragedy that befell the family of the Prophet. And then there was one tragedy that befell the companions of Imam Ali, many of whom had been companions of the Prophet, and many of whom had grown up with the stories of the time of the Prophet, and they saw those stories come to life in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen when Imam Ali was struck. And the news spread through the city of Kufa. The family of the Imam gathered around him, praying that, "Oh Allah, let this wound not be one that will prevent the Imam from continuing his leadership and his guidance of the Muslims." And it is said that multitudes began to gather outside of the house of the Imam, his chosen companions who used to come to him for guidance. And then there were widows, and there were orphans, and there were poor people who said that the Imam is for us not just a ruler and not just a person in charge of the government, but he is for us the one who would come to us in the darkness of the night when no one would look after us, and he would come and bring us food, and he would bring us our basic necessities. And those children who were growing up without a father, Imam Ali would sit on the ground with them, and he would play with them, and he would feed them with his own hands. All of those who had benefited from the knowledge of the Imam, from the kindness of the Imam, from the generosity of the Imam, when they heard that their Imam had been struck and had left the masjid with blood gushing from his wound, they came with tears in their eyes, with prayers on their lip. Oh Allah, do not deprive us of the leadership and the presence of such a loving father and such a caring Imam as we have not heard of or seen throughout the world. Sometimes when the Imam's condition would become weak inside the house, the women who were gathered around the Imam, they would begin to weep. And the Imam, he would send a message outside that tell those who have gathered outside of the house that they are to disperse and to go further away, because the family of the Prophet, they are grieving, they are mourning, and I don't want their voice to come and to be heard by those who are not members of the family. Let them grieve in peace. And in one of those times, it is said that when Imam Hassan gave that message, all dispersed. But then either Asbagh ibn Nabata or Sa'sa ibn Suhan, one of those noble companions of the Imam, he did not get up. The Imam heard his weeping and sent Imam Hassan a second time. And Imam Hassan had tears in his eyes. He said that my father has sent me. Did he not say that all are to disperse? And that companion said that, "O grandson of the Messenger of Allah, yes, I heard, and I am not disobedient. But every time I want to stand up, my legs don't have strength. And I imagine that how will I live if I am orphaned after the death of Amir al-Mu'mineen?" He was an adult. He was a leader of his tribe, but he felt that he would be like an orphaned child if Imam Ali was not there. Is it possible for me to come and to bid farewell, to gaze upon my Imam? Imam Hassan came back. He gave the message to his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen. He called his companion and said, "Yes, you may come." And gazing upon the Imam, it was too much for that loyal follower to bear. He broke down in tears. I turn and ask Allah, how is it that when Amir al-Mu'mineen is on his own bed in his own home, surrounded by his loving family and surrounded by his companions, that this is a sight which they were unable to bear? How was it that in Karbala, Imam Hussein was surrounded not by loving companions, but by 30,000 of the most wretched wretched soldiers of Yazid, enemies of Allah, all with their weapons drawn, all with their treachery visible in their actions and in their words. And there was no one there to provide support or to provide comfort to Imam Hussein. And Lady Zainab, she watched that scene. In her desperation, it is said that she turned even to Umar ibn Sa'd and she said that, tell me, O son of Sa'd, are you going to watch as my brother is slaughtered in front of your eyes? And even Umar ibn Sa'd, in spite of his wretchedness and in spite of his treachery, seeing that desperate plea of Sayyidah Zainab, was not able to hold back his tears. He turned away and even he was grieved. And it was at that point that Shimr stepped forward and Lady Zainab saw a sight for which Amir al-Mu'mineen had grieved many years before on his way to Siffin, when Imam Ali said that, oh my son Hussein, it is as if I am watching as those who claim to be Muslims, they surround you and they show you no mercy. Your lips are parched and you are surrounded by an enemy who attacks you from all sides. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Oh Allah, we ask you to accept our remembrance of Amir al-Mu'mineen. We ask you, oh Allah, to grant us the love of the Prophet and the family of the Prophet, to grant us their prayers, their intercession in the hereafter, and their company starting from the grave and on the day of judgment and in paradise for all eternity. O Allah, whatever sins and shortcomings we have, forgive us and guide us so that we can adopt in our lives the beautiful character and example of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. When a world lives a life for fun, when a world lives a life of material desires and pleasures, let us taste and let us live the life of religious and spiritual truth, so that we can be worthy of the name and of the path of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. O Allah, on these nights in which we remember the martyrdom of Imam Ali, we ask for you to increase the punishment of all of those who oppressed Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, all of those who oppressed our Prophet in his lifetime, all of those who showed injustice to his daughter Fatima Zahra, all of those who were oppressors of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the descendants of Amir al-Mu'mineen. O Allah, separate us from their actions, from their character, from the evil that they did, and count us on the path and on the side of Ahlul Bayt. O Allah, we ask you in these nights of prayer, in these days and nights of fasting and worship, hasten the appearance of the Imam of our time. In a world filled with chaos and justice, we know that there is only one solution, and that is the guidance, the leadership, and the message of Imam Mahdi, for which all of the believers prayed, for which all of humanity is in wait. O Allah, allow us to be that generation that gazes upon the beautiful face of Imam Mahdi, is enabled to offer him our allegiance and our support, so that we can see the triumph of truth and justice and the final defeat of evil and oppression in every corner of the earth. Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer there is a fire. Ya Ali, in the heart of every believer there is a fire. Everyone. Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire. Here in Kufa, there is a fire. In the heart of every believer, in the soul of the Kaaba, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, everyone, there is fire. Do not go to the mosque of Kufa, cried the souls of the birds in Kufa. Ibn Muljam waits to kill you, sleeping here in the streets of Kufa. In the heart of the call to prayer are the tears of the call to prayer, and the soul of the caller, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. Who conspires then to kill you? In the hand of the man who strikes you is the sword of the one who tried to sway his hand and his feet to fight you. In his blood is the blood of Yazid. For Hassan is a poison indeed. For Hussein is a dagger, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. Heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In your sajda lies a sajda to reflect one holy sajda of Hussein and Sons Karbala. As you prayed in the mosque of Kufa, so the blood of the head and face will be the blood for Allah to instill faith in Mahdi the Savior, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. Hassan and Hussein will miss you. How will Zainab cope without you? After you, Ali, will there be death and further calamities? And the blood of the line of Hassan, and the form of a son called Qasim, who will die as a martyr, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. Rest and soul that falls to Jannah, now you will meet with Fatima. So Muhammad, he will greet you. Bless the soul that is part of you. Now the world that you leave behind you, as it turns, will be crying for you. Every son, every daughter, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer, there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the the heart of every believer there is a fire, Ya Ali. In the heart of every believer there is a fire. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah. As-salamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Imam al-Muttaqeen Aliyan waliyullah. As-salamu alayka ya Fatimah az-Zahra sayyidat an-nisa al-alamin. As-salamu alayka ya Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. As-salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah al-Husayn wa Ali ibn al-Husayn Zain al-Abidin wa Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي تقي الجواد وعلي بن محمد النقي وحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان يا خليفة الرحمن يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.